Welcome to Affordable Athlete Meal Prep with Dr. J. This week we're going to make beef and black bean tacos. Here's our grocery list if you'd like to follow along. Hi, Dr. J here. We're back in my kitchen. We're going to make another affordable meal tonight. Tonight we're going to make tacos. There's going to be a lot of ways for you to dress your taco here as far as what our options are. I'm going to give you a few of those as we work through today. But before we get started, I'll kind of give you a rundown of what I've got going on here. I got this bag of chips here for about $2.49 at Aldi's, my favorite spot. I got this can of black beans for only 80 cents at Aldi's as well. I like to use beans, especially when I'm making taco meat, to be able to stretch my pound of hamburger or my turkey or ground chicken a little bit further. That way it helps me reduce costs, but it's also giving me nutritional benefit as well. Additionally, I got a bag of jalapenos. This bag was only 35 cents. Typically, the bags of jalapenos are about $1 per pound. So that's quite a bit for a pound considering how small jalapenos are as a pepper. So we got a few of these today. All right, we've got some radishes to put on our side as a relish. We'll trim these up a little bit later. We got our red onion to give us some banging flavor. This red onion was about $1 today. They're about 98 cents per pound. And this one's a big guy here. We have 2 limes. We'll probably end up using just one, but I bought 2 just in case. These were each 19 cents a piece. We got Roma tomatoes. If I'm not mistaken, they were about $1 per pound today, and 3 of these was just under a pound. So these were about 90 cents for all 3 of those. And then I bought 2 avocados as well. Each of these avocados is only 60 cents at Aldi's, but if you don't have the option to make guacamole, which is what we're going to get into, it'll just be a version of guacamole, so don't come for me. But if you wanted to buy guacamole instead, this pack here was about $2.50, $3, and that comes about to be the same price when you're looking at, all right, if you don't have the supplies for making guacamole, it might be cheaper for you to buy pre-made guacamole. And also, I've not refined the art of making salsa, and so I bought a salsa today. And this salsa was between $2.50 to about $3. And I was hoping to get the pound of ground beef that was on sale. Sometimes at Aldi's they have organic grass-fed beef in the vacuum sealed packs, but they ran out by the time I got there, and I've got a pack of ground beef. It's about 93% lean, 7% fat. I typically go for anything for 90-10, so 90% lean, 10% fat or better. I prefer it from a taste standpoint and from a health standpoint. But if you're looking straight from flavor, maybe 75-25 is a good option for you, or 85-15. But us as athletes, we're going to look to be kind of more on that lean side so that we're getting kind of the most bang for our buck from a nutritional standpoint. And so this pound of 93.7 costed me about $6.33. And then I got a bunch of cilantro. And typically cilantro is one of the cheaper bunches for seasoning. And this one was 50 cents, but it can run you anywhere from 50 cents to maybe $1.50. And now we're going to get into our carb selection. So I've got a pack here of extra large burrito size wraps, which I'm going to make one of these for my lunch tomorrow. I also have some rice. I'm probably just going to make a small amount of serving. If you want to make like a burrito bowl or like a taco bowl, this would be a good option. This big bag, my favorite type of rice is jasmine rice. But if you're going to get white rice or brown rice, typically they're about $2 and change per pound, or maybe even $1 a pound, depending on what grocery store you're at. Jasmine rice typically is a little bit more expensive, but I really like the flavor, and it's usually in that ballpark of $4 to $5 for a pound or 2 pounds. And then our other option would also be the tortilla chips. And so you could make nachos out of this. And then I forgot to grab our cheese. Give me 1 second. I got a pack of shredded cheese, which this is going to go right back in the fridge until we're ready to use it. I like pepper jack. At Aldi, how big is this? This is a 12 ounce, so 3 cups of shredded cheese typically runs you anywhere from $2.50 to about $3. So it's a pretty good price for a good amount of cheese. And we're gonna get started here. We're gonna start by chopping everything up and getting everything set up. And then I'll walk you through how I like to make my rice, how I brown my beef for the situation, and also how I throw my guacamole together. All right, so a little bit of sad news. My other mic cut out while I was washing all the vegetables, but essentially I took half of the cilantro, I rinsed it, I rinsed my onion as well, and then I have my 3 out of those 5 peppers that I bought that I rinsed as well. I took about half of the radishes, I rinsed those, I rinsed my Roma tomato, and I rinsed my lime so that we're ready to chop and go. I have my knife here. I also brought out all of my spices that I'm planning to use today. And before we get going, I'm going to drain these black beans. And so then I'll give you a walkthrough of these spices in just a second here. And then always be careful when you're using a can opener. I'm going to hold the lid down as I drain it, and then I'm going to rinse it out with a little bit of water here and there, and I'm going to shake the can out. Now that our black beans are rinsed, they'll be ready to go when it's time to utilize them. And quick overview of our equipment setup today. I've got a knife. I've got a wooden spoon that I'm going to use for our meat. And then I'm going to use the spatula with our rice. So I'm going to make a little bit of rice today. The way that I make my rice is I use a 1-to-2 ratio. So I'm going to put 1 cup of rice in, and for that 1 cup of rice, I'm going to add 2 cups of water. I'm going to add, not until later though, I'm going to add some cilantro and I'll add some lime juice. But before it cooks, we'll add a little bit of salt in here. And so I'm going to scoop out 1 cup of rice here before we get going. So we're gonna make our rice in this saucepan today. I've got a lid, which will come in handy a little bit later here. I'm gonna add just a little bit of grapeseed oil to our pan before we add our rice and add the water. You could even use coconut oil is a really good option, olive oil, whatever your favorite cooking oil is will help this rice get a lot of flavor and have some good texture to it. So I'm gonna put just a splash in. I'm gonna add this rice, and then we're gonna add 2 cups of water now. We're gonna put this bad boy on high heat. Get a little bit of salt in here so that we up the temperature that it actually boils at. That way it's nice and toasty. So little dash of salt, and we'll turn this thing all the way up. All right, and so we're gonna boil that uncovered. While that's boiling, we're gonna get to chopping here. Get this onion going. Get that top off here. Probably end up using about half this onion. There we go. Get some of these exterior layers off. We want it to be plump all the way around, and you can see it was a little bit thin in some of those spaces. And this one still looking just a little bit thin. So we'll take that layer as well. And we'll cut it thinly. Lay that down flat, and then we'll cut it from the center. Cut it from the center over. Keeping those fingers out of the way. All right, so now we've got onion for our guac and onion for our sauteing in this pan here. All right, we'll get our beef set up here. So I'm gonna turn on this burner. All right, this burner is on high right now. We're trying to get this water to boil, and we want it to boil all the way until there's almost no moisture in that pan. This one, we want the pan to heat up so we can start to add our meat and everything into it. So we'll add a little bit of this grapeseed oil so that we can saute our onions. And we're gonna move on to our peppers next here. Get these peppers cut up. Cut off the stem first. And then I usually cut them lengthwise. And I usually get rid of most of the seeds, because that's where most of the heat exists. But still, the peppers have a lot of good flavor here. You can see our rice is starting to boil here, which is perfect. Give it a little stir, just to make sure none of our rice is sticking to the bottom. And my favorite part about cooking rice this way is that once it boils, and we'll be able to turn the heat off, and then we'll add the top to it, and essentially it'll steam the rest of the way. So after we're done boiling it, we don't have to pay it any mind at all. You can hear the oil is heating up in our sauteing pan for the meat here. This will probably be one of our quicker dinners that we make, and also a favorite of mine. So I'll cut these peppers lengthwise, and then I'll dice them from there. And our first priority with that hamburger is going to be to brown it. So give this just a little bit. Exactly where we want it to be. Put about half of, well, 2/3 of the onion into this mix here. We'll add all of that jalapeno we just cut. All right. And basically, I try to make, whenever I buy hamburger, I try to make that stretch as far as possible. And so we'll give this a quick stir here so nothing gets stuck. This one's gonna be a noisy one. I'm gonna turn down this temperature here. All right. And then I'm gonna cut open this package with a different knife than I'm already using, so that I don't cross-contaminate my chopping knife. There we go. All right, and then we'll drop this in here, and we're gonna use that wooden spoon that we've got here. I'm gonna throw in a bunch of our seasoning. We've got this taco al pastor mix. I actually got this from Aldi, and I thought it would be a cheaper option in comparison to buying taco mixes all the time. But a taco mix will run you anywhere from 50 cents to maybe $1. And this al pastor mix is pretty much a handful of those taco seasonings all in one package. And this only ran me about $2.50. But before we get to seasoning that, you can see our rice is almost there. You can almost see that top layer there. So I'm gonna give this one more good stir here. All right, and then we're gonna cover this, and we're gonna turn off the heat for this actually. So I'm gonna get this covered, and then we'll let the rice steam now, all right, as we're focusing on our beef. And so I'm gonna add a good amount of this seasoning here, cover that whole pound up with a good amount of this. And once I get the seasonings how I want them to be, then I'll add the black beans in. And I'll have the black beans actually cook with the meat. And the nice part about using a leaner cut of meat is we don't have to necessarily drain the meat, because there won't be as much grease runoff, which makes it a little bit easier. I just put on some crushed red pepper. All right, now I'm gonna add a dash of cayenne. All right, I'm a big fan of chili flavor, and so I'm gonna add chili powder to it as well. Whenever I make tacos, I always add some good chili powder here, and you gotta do it. Garlic powder, that's the OG. Get a good amount in there. Onion powder, and because I used a pre-made seasoning mix, typically I don't touch the salt again. And also this brand happens to be low sodium, which is something that I like, because we're gonna be getting a little bit of sodium from that mix. This is black pepper now, but the biggest thing is we'll also be getting some sodium from the black beans just because of how they prepare them, in addition to the cheese that we'll be having. So I'm gonna break apart the hamburger, and then I'm gonna throw the black beans in there. And then I'll turn the heat back up to medium now that not everything on the stovetop is roaring and going at the same time. And if your mix looks a little naked, so to speak, add a little bit more seasoning once you break it up. I'm probably gonna add a little bit more of that pastor mix. I like the amount of the other seasonings that I put in there, but I'm gonna give it another dusting of the taco al pastor mix. And I'm trying not to make the mess, I promise. This is gonna be absolutely fantastic. All right, so that is our mix there. Give this in, black beans added. That's almost like doubling our amount of meat without having to double our cost of meat as well, but also getting more protein into this mix. I think we have enough. All right, I'm gonna turn this heat back up on here. And I wait to add the black beans till after I've separated the beef, just so that I don't end up mashing the beans essentially. So we'll let this brown, and we're gonna cook it until the hamburger is all the way cooked through. All right, so this is on medium heat. There's no heat here anymore. All right, I'm gonna grab a bowl here. All right, we're gonna chop our avocados up. If you wanna make guac, this is an option. Not necessarily a have to, you know. Like I mentioned before at the beginning of the video, if you're really limited in that kitchen space, feel free to take advantage of pre-made guacamoles. All right, definitely a good option. One of the ways that I get most of my avocado out of the shell is I cut these bad boys into quarters, and I cut that top corner off. All right, and then you peel the avocado out of the shell. 8 quarters, aka 2 full avocados here. And then we'll get into this Roma tomato and the lime here. There we go. See how much of that avocado we're able to get by just literally doing that kind of a trick. Simple. All right, I'm gonna rinse my hands real quick because I'm covered in avocado. All right, I'm sure you can hear it, but our beef is sizzling. There we go. Coming along pretty nicely here. I'm gonna turn the heat down just a little bit. Oh, that smells good. Our jalapenos are vibrant. Our red onion is looking good. All right, kind of put it more on a little bit of a simmer temperature. And we'll let that sit. All right, we are gonna chop up this lime and this Roma tomato. And we're gonna cut our Roma tomato a little bit differently today. We're gonna get rid of all of the inside parts, like, so that we have just that outer shell. All right, so taking out the inside there, scrape out the seeds. Same thing with this half. Cut near the bottom where that stem would attach, and then cut near the backside. So we're treating the tomato almost like a pepper today, where we're taking out the seeds and that inner part that holds the seeds. So now we just have the outside shell. We're gonna cut it lengthwise just like we did the peppers, and then into little squares so that we can dice them and they'll mix into our guacamole batch here. So honestly, making the guacamole might be the longest part of tonight's meal, considering our beef is done, and then our rice is probably about maybe 3 minutes away from being done. So I'm gonna cut a half of a half. So this one will go for the meat. All right, this one will go for the rice. All right, and then we'll use this whole half for our guacamole here. And I'm gonna turn this all the way down. One of the beautiful and hard parts about having this gas stove is my stovetop runs warm. All right, and so simmering does and doesn't work on certain days depending on what pan and what assortment I've got. All of my meat has turned brown. I don't see any pink anymore. So I'm actually going to turn the heat off on this, and my vegetables are all cooked all the way through, just so that it doesn't burn to this pan. And if you take a look here, there's not a lot of extra juice just from us using a super lean cut. So I don't want this to burn. So I'm actually going to turn this burner off because I can tell that everything is cooked. Our vegetables look good, our beans look good, and our beef looks good. All right, so we're going to let this sit. All right. And then now we're going to put our focus on our guacamole. And so we'll squeeze our lime out into here. This is just a version of it. I'm sure there are plenty different ways to make it, but whatever way makes you the happiest, I think will probably be the best recipe for your guacamole. But I'm using a whole half a lime here. I'm gonna use just a sprinkling of garlic powder, not a whole lot. I'm gonna use the same of onion powder, just a sprinkling, not a whole lot, just enough to cover it. And then I'm gonna give it, I'm gonna give it some black powder. Although black powder and salt is simple, never outweigh its benefits and effect in just bringing the baseline of a meal up. And then a little bit of our Himalayan salt. That smells good already. And because I'm me, cayenne, I'm gonna put cayenne in here. And then before I mix in any of the tomatoes, the onions, or the jalapenos, here's just an overview of what it looks like with all my seasonings in here. I put just a dusting of each of those things. I want it to be as naturally flavorful as possible, but I do want some of that heat hit from each of those things. And so I'm gonna get out a fork now. We'll mash this bad boy up. Fork in hand. We're definitely making a chunky guacamole today. And it is a fine art to pick a perfectly ripe avocado. I have just decided that, you know, it's a fine art. Am I an artist? Maybe. Am I an avocado artist? I'm not sure. Do I enjoy them from time to time? Most definitely. But we're pursuing the simplest, delicious guacamole recipe that we can make with this limited kitchen. That's all. So I got most of my avocado to a level that I want it to be, and now I'm going to start adding in these mix-ins. All right, let me dump some of my Roma, some of the red onion that we still got on this tray here. Oh, that smells so good. And then we're gonna kind of pick out some of the heavy stems from the cilantro and pick off mostly leaves. Sometimes I'm real good about this. Sometimes I get impatient about it. It's okay to eat the stems of cilantro. They can get stuck in your teeth. That's all. But most of the time I try to pull the leaves off, depending on my patience level for the day. But basically, you want to make sure that all of your pieces have that bright greenness to them. And then we are going to chop this as finely as my little knife will allow. But if you bought the pre-made already, you could be setting up your nachos right now. Otherwise, you could be creating your nacho bowl. But the only thing we have left is to trim up some more of these jalapenos and then to dress our rice with the lime and the cilantro, and the same thing with our taco meat. We'll dress them both as well. And then we'll make a little garnish out of these radishes. So we'll cut them into small slices. But we are cruising from a time standpoint. This is one of my favorite go-tos. Sometimes I forget about it because it is so easy. But the beauty of you making it at the house with yourself is going to be that you've got leftovers, so you can eat the rest of the week for that same price that you would have paid for one night of tacos. All right, time to chop these up and be mindful of your fingers as per usual. Typically I go over it a couple of times to try to get it as fine as possible because the leaves do move on you. And then also I want to bruise these leaves of cilantro so that they give off more flavor. And you can, if you're cutting them as I'm cutting them, you can actually smell more of that flavor and that scent coming off of them as you chop them. There we go. Now we're looking right. All right, we'll give a small handful of this into our guacamole mix. Scoop a little bit off of the knife. And then before we mix it again, I'm gonna add more jalapeno. We're gonna give this guacamole a stir here. It's so pretty. It is definitely colorful. And you know, sometimes you're not sure if you get the fixing just right. So we will give this a taste test. It is definitely a chunky salsa, a chunky guacamole here. Get out a testing spoon. You can see it. I think it needs a little bit more pepper, just to give it a little bit deeper of a flavor. But overall, super fresh. I'm getting super hits of lime, and all of the vegetables that are in here are they're just hitting right. So those 2 avocados plus a quarter of a large red onion, half of a lime, and a whole jalapeno made all of this guacamole for us. And this is definitely larger than, it says 5 ounces on it, but this is definitely larger than a 5-ounce container. So I'm gonna leave this off to the side here. All right. Now we're gonna tend to our rice. So see all that lovely steam that came up out of it? It's at the bottom of the pan here, but we don't have any extra moisture left in there. We're gonna squeeze this lime all over it. Get us some cilantro lime rice here. All right. Give it a touch of the cilantro, and we'll bring the rest of the cilantro into our beef mix here. We'll get our last lime quarter into use. There we go. All right, we'll give this rice a good stir. It's a little bit sticky with how we make it here, even without having to add any sugar or any sweetness. All you saw me add was that grapeseed oil, a little bit of salt in the water at the beginning. But look at the texture of this rice. Oh, I'm excited for this. This is gonna make an amazing taco bowl. And then we'll stir up our beef here. Got that lime juice in it and the cilantro. It looks festive, that's for sure. We've got some greens, browns, and almost that light purple coming off that black bean. All right, so I'm gonna show you a couple ways to fix it, but before we get to fixing it, I'm gonna rinse off this cutting board, rinse off my knife, and we are going to slice up these radishes as garnish. Last but not least, we're gonna slice up these radishes, take off the tops and snip the bottom, And then we'll check it for any blemishes, and then we're gonna cut it into small slices here. If you don't like radishes, you can totally omit this step. And honestly, that's one of the beauties of cooking in your own house, is you can sample as you work, and you might not be able to do that in a commercial kitchen. All right, so we're gonna fix a couple different options tonight. I'm probably gonna end up eating the nachos with some cheese on it, but I'm gonna make a burrito for me to have for lunch tomorrow. So we've got our extra large burrito situation here. I've got a plate where we're gonna fix this burrito. So we're gonna kind of layer it on one side so that we're able to get a good roll going. Try to get as big of a shell as I can, kind of Chipotle style. All right, so we'll get a good helping of our meat in here. Get that protein. All right. After that, we'll get a scoop of rice. All right, and then we still have our salsa that was pre-made, which I'm gonna grab, as well as our pepper jack cheese. So I'm probably gonna put 1 scoop of the salsa in there, but I'm probably gonna drain most of the juice out of there because this is gonna sit in the fridge overnight. My burrito, and then we'll give it a little covering of some cheese so that when it goes in the microwave, it all comes together. Get out a different fork than the one we made. Then we made our guacamole with. Drain most of the juice out of that. Give it a helping of our guacamole that I am so proud of us. We did a good job. And this doesn't cost an extra $1 or $2 to put on the side. All right, so we've got our insides packed pretty darn good here. All right, I'm gonna fold in the sides to make this pathway, but I'm gonna shimmy it towards that top edge so that's a little bit easier to roll. And here we go, one shot. Do not miss your chance. There we go. Yes. Yes. Okay, and then before it falls apart, I'm gonna wrap this in aluminum foil. It's looking okay for right now. It'll be good to go for tomorrow. Beautiful, beautiful masterpiece. All right, I'm not gonna mess with it too much. And then tuck it in safely. All right, so we've got lunch for tomorrow. I'm gonna fix my nachos in this bowl. I'm gonna put just a little bit of rice at the bottom. All right. Try to make as little mess in this kitchen as possible. All right, get a good helping of this taco meat here with our black beans. All right, see what I've got. All right, and then I'm gonna put cheese on it and I'm gonna throw this in the microwave. And then after that, I'm gonna add my cold toppings. And then we'll get after it with some chips and call it a night. All right, so this is gonna go in the microwave for probably about 20 seconds, just enough to get this cheese melty. All right. Now we're talking. Our cheese is much more melty. We'll give this a good little stir here. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. And I'm pretty sure I just used my clean fork. that I set aside. Oh my gosh, look at this. Look at how good this looks. I just used my clean fork that I set aside for the salsa to mix that. But we're gonna get out another spoon here, get some of this good salsa going in here. Give it a couple of good scoops of that. Salsa is awesome for you because it's made of pretty much all vegetables, but it also tastes good, and that's okay. We're gonna get some of this guacamole. If you made it, it's center stage, baby. And if you didn't make it and you like it, it's center stage, baby. All right. And then we're gonna throw a couple of radishes in here. All right, to kind of garnish it off on the side as a pretty dish. All right. And then if I was eating by myself, I'd probably get a paper towel or two full of some chips to enjoy with it. And so we'll set that up for me now. And I'd enjoy this meal as I chill out for the rest of my evening. But once again, this is one of those meals that is easy to make from the standpoint of you don't need a lot of equipment. You do need a little bit of time. You need to want to do it. But this is a healthy meal that is enjoyable, but also will help fuel your performance. So once again, take a look at my meal here. See that? And then we've got our chips. All right. Once again, I'm Dr. J, and this has been another affordable meal by me for athletes like me that are on a limited budget, limited kitchen, and might not always have time to have all those extra resources. So this was a simple meal that has a multitude of options, and I'll put all of those options into the grocery shopping list for this recipe. And thank you for tuning in. And as always, be refined by the grind.